Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. This is the last session between us and the bar, so just bear with us for a couple more minutes. So first of all, let's just kick off. James, please introduce yourself and Skinny Dip for those that don't know.
Perfect. I can try and be quick so everyone can get to the bar earlier, but I'm James. I'm one of the co-founders of Skinny Dip. I don't know how familiar any of you guys are with Skinny Dip. We're a UK fashion lifestyle brand. We trade in 20 countries. We're multi-channel. Our website gets 30 million visitors a year onto it. We have 4 of our own bricks and mortar stores, 200 concessions in 15 countries, and wholesale relationships with everyone from Boots and Beauty to ASOS in fashion, Macy's in department stores, Pets at Home in pets, and product ranges, everything clothing and non-clothing.
It's interesting. I mean, it's a super competitive space. So I guess, what's the kind of USP? I mean, I know you talk about a lot about customer centricity and everything else as well.
Yeah.
And you talk about that being the center of your brand. I guess you've got product and also customer service. And we've been talking about that a lot today around how can we stand out. So how are you achieving that?
So I think in terms of something that was always very important from us from day one was building a brand that had value and had identity, because our target demographic is Gen Zs. Gen Zs grew up with a phone in their hand. They are notoriously known for not being the most loyal of customer. And when we started our business, we were told very early on, actually I went to a networking event quite similar to this, and I remember the speaker said, to build a really successful brand, you have to be the cheapest or you have to be the best. And our logic was, well, we don't think we can be the cheapest because we don't have that buying scale. We didn't have third-party investment or funding in us. We want to try and be the best. And I read this book, which today I still say to every person that joined our company, it's one of the best books I've ever read for building a brand. Some of you may have read it. It's called Delivering Happiness. And it's by a guy called Tony Hirsch, who unfortunately passed away last year. He created an incredible brand in the US called Zappos, which was acquired by Amazon. And his USP, which I just took huge inspiration from, was he was a shoe retailer, an online shoe retailer, didn't do anything particularly different from anyone else. But instead of saying his business was a shoe retailer, his ethos was, I am a customer service business that just so happens to sell shoes. And I think that was brilliant because nowadays in a market, as you said, as saturated as fashion and accessories, where it can often be a race to the bottom, what sets you apart? And for us, what tried to set us apart was focusing on being authentic, being real, building a connection with our customer base, because we believed, and thankfully so far it's proven to be true, that if you market to the heart rather than market to the head, you build that loyalty, that innate loyalty within a customer base where they will come back again and again and again. And I think product in itself, we try and create, the way I always look at Skinny Dip is there's 2 kind of main strands to the business. We have our product stand, which if I use a football analogy is our Cristiano Ronaldo. But then equally important is the brand side, which is our Lionel Messi. And one can't function without the other. So, when we started the business, we wanted to create Skinny Dip. We had 3 core principles, which was desire, aspiration, exclusivity. How can we make our brand as desirable as possible? So let's focus on making the products unique and different and pushing our design team to try and create and innovate. In terms of aspiration, we targeted an 18 to 25-year-old demographic. Now, often people say to me, well, I have mums that come up to me and say, my daughter of 12 years old, she loves Skinny Dip. And that's exactly what we want, because, I always take Yorkie, it's not for girls. They don't actually mean that. What they're saying is by actually being aspirational and targeting a certain demographic and being very particular in all your marketing towards that demographic, it actually opens up the market a lot bigger for your brand. So that's where the aspiration came in. And then exclusivity. Again, if I look back at my journey over the last 13 years, when we first started the business, we thought, how can we try and sell Skinny Dip to as many places as possible? And that was the wrong way of looking at it, because for us, it was actually by making it exclusive. I think one of the best examples of that as a brand is Soho House. The reason they have 50,000 people on their waiting list to be a member of Soho House is because they make it particularly difficult to become a member there. And in life, it doesn't matter whether it's professional or personal. You always want what you can't have. And I think having that exclusivity of those 3 core principles, aspiration, desire, exclusivity, and by focusing on marketing to the heart, that is what I think has set us apart over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, As Gerard did, on that journey, you've got a lot of things right, a lot of things wrong. It'd be great to sort of kind of share things that you've learnt, hard lessons effectively, that you've had in the past. So as I said, we'll uncover a little bit, to kind of share with the team here.
So if I go through a few lessons that we've learned, today Skinny Dip employs 300 people. When we started the business, it's me, my best friend, and my brother. There were 3 of us working in an industrial estate in Wembley. And our business cards never said managing director. They always used to say account manager. The reason they said account manager is I never wanted anyone to think that me being a 23-year-old kid with no business experience wasn't responsible for running a company. And when we first started, and if I go back to those early days, we did everything. But we made out we were much bigger than we were. Because what we found being a product-based business is nobody wanted to give us our first opportunity. Everyone wanted to be the second, the third, and the fourth. And how we overcame that is we were hustlers. We called everyone. We never took rejection too personally. And I think a lot of time you need to put into context. A business is super important. Everyone has aspirations and desires and bills to pay and a journey that they want to go on. But for me, and it sounds cliche and it's making me cringe before I even say it, but speaking openly and honestly, stuff that is priceless is your health, your family, love, happiness, stuff which, you can't really put a price on. So for me, it's about putting into context what's super important. Do I want to be professionally successful? Yes, I think lots of people do. But is that the most important thing in my life? No. And I think having that mentality to me, and it's shared by my business partners as well, to some extent made us fearless, because in life, like in anything, business in particular, you suffer from rejection all day long. So not taking rejection very too personally. And when we first started and cold called every retailer and got told no, 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 no by everybody, it would have been so easy to give up and to go and get a proper job. And the fact that we were very tenacious, we stuck at it, we laughed. Every rejection we got, we used to put down the phone and laugh about it. And I remember one story of a supermarket where I was calling and emailing this guy and he would never ever reply. And I learned a routine. You never call anyone on a Monday because everyone's in a bad mood after the weekend. It was always Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, Friday were the key days. And I remember calling this guy after months of being rejected and saying, hey, it's one of the biggest supermarkets in the country. James, I'm calling from Skinny Dip. Don't know if you've seen my emails. Love to get 10 minutes of your time. And I remember this guy paused. He said, have I replied to any of your emails? No. He said, and have I returned any of your calls? No. He said, well, then get the message, not interested. And that's always stuck with me, even 10 years later. They ironically came back to us last year asking if they could stock us.
And did you do the same to them? Or not?
Do you know what? Another lesson I've learned, never cut your nose to spite your face and never say no if there's an opportunity to grow your business. So we actually said yes in an indirect way, a different buyer at the time. But, back in the early days, there was always issues and problems we faced. We took our first order on, we took £100,000 order on. And at that time, it was the biggest order we've ever taken on. And it was 3 of us. We did everything. We did the sales, the account management, the production, we raised the finance. When the trucks came in, I remember it was about 2 months after, because my business, I don't know how many of you guys are in product-based business, but my business is very much, you produce it and you wait 10 to 12 weeks for it to turn up. And you pray, especially in the early days, that everything was okay. And I remember this truck came in and we unloaded it, we put our high-vis jackets on and we opened it up and it was the biggest order we've ever taken on and it was phone cases. And again, this is a complete true story. We opened it up and all the packaging fell apart. And this was on a Thursday and we had the delivery on the Monday. And thinking back, it was like, what do you do in that situation? Because you can't let the customer down. The customer is always the most important thing. And I remember calling up every friend, and I stretched the friend word very, very far. I was calling acquaintances, Facebook people that I met traveling 10 years before, and I was trying to get as many, and we ended up building a production line in our office, and we worked for 72 hours straight, a lot of Red Bull, a lot of caffeine, and we managed to get, I think we cleaned WH Smith out of Pritt stick and glue, but we made it happen. And I think that's the thing, that in life and in business, a lot of times things don't go the way that you're planned. Yeah, so it's about having a plan B and a plan C. Yeah,
no, really interesting. And I guess, what would be your advice from people if so we've got some startups, we've got some established businesses here. what would you be your things that you've learned along the way of things that have not gone well, but also things that have gone well? What was the sort of kind of key learnings of it? I know customer centricity side as well, but.
So I think triggering emotion is super important in any business, because emotion is a feeling that if it's harnessed the right way, it, like I said, it pays dividends for a long period of time. I always think a perfect example of that is whenever I go into Tesco, I'll only buy Heinz ketchup. I won't buy any of the other brands, because the emotion of me is I trust the brand. And I think that one of the things we've always stayed true to is being agile. And I think agility is often used in business in terms of every business likes to claim they're agile. But what does agility really mean? I think a best example of that for us happened over COVID, where we haven't had any Series A, B, C. We're self-funded. We've grown the business in 2020 to a 40 million revenue business single-handedly with no external investment. And COVID happened in 2020, and literally like that, all of a sudden, it was like the world came crashing down. We had £3.5 million worth of orders that were cancelled overnight. We traded in 250 Topshop stores where the stores were closed, and 20 of our own stores were closed. We employed 80 people at head office outside of store staff that rely on us to pay their bills and mortgages and families. And it was like this act of God that had happened, that an entire decade's worth of work, like a tsunami, had been washed away. And I remember sitting in the office, and one of my business partners, who's my brother, was horrifically ill with COVID at the time. So we were a man down. This was before furlough or anything like that. And I remember thinking to myself, what can we do? And that's where I go back to the agility. The one thing, we kind of stripped it back to basics. What are we best at? What is our skill set? And, I always advocate anyone that starts a business to have strong people, a strong team, strong business partners around you, because you hopefully bounce off each other, and what you're strong at, somebody else is not so strong at, and vice versa. So we knew how to produce product. And I remember going into the supermarket, this was just before lockdown had happened, and seeing a line about half a mile of people queuing to buy hand sanitizer and face masks. So we decided to get into the hand sanitizer business. And we'd never been in the hand sanitizer. Well, yeah. But when I say the hand sanitizer business, it didn't sit well to me going into convenience stores and seeing people paying £10 for a hand sanitizer and exploiting it. I knew that the product could be produced. If you look at any of the main brands of hand sanitizer in a non-pandemic setting, it's £1, it's £2. It's not particularly expensive. So thankfully, we had the relationships with Boots, with Superdrug, with Ulta, with Sephora, and we just picked up the phones and we said, do you guys need hand sanitizer? And they were like, well, can you get it? I couldn't. I said, yes, absolutely, we can get it. Because it was do or die. And I think then again, the agility part of our business, which always remains strong, is, and the message behind it. And long story short, we were able to take on a lot of orders. It offset a huge amount of losses. Mm-hmm. And with the business, and would I be sitting here today if we wouldn't have had that thought of actually, let's try something. Let's not sit on our hands and give up and cry about it and say it's all been taken away from us by a virus. Let's actually fight and try and make something happen. And that is still very, very prevalent in our organisation today. We have ideas mornings at Skinny Dip, where any person, whether you're the most senior or the most junior, can put forward an idea. And, that's how we got into pet accessories. We were never planning on getting into it, but we're a vegan brand. We have an office-friendly, dog-friendly, a pet-friendly environment. And everyone was bringing their dogs in. And there was talk in the office of, I just can't get a good pet accessory from Pets at Home. And someone said, why don't Skinny Dip start doing pet accessories? And I think when you're very regimented, and everything has advantages and disadvantages, but I think when you have that agility and you're prepared to try things, you have to forgive me. I don't know who said the quote. I think it was either Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs that, to make an omelette, you have to break some eggs, and it's not always perfect. The thing that I've learned over the last 13 years is a business is never in a perfect situation to launch. There's always things that you can do better. There's always things that aren't quite ready. And if you wait for the perfect moment, you'll never get started. So our mentality is always to say, if something is right, we'll try it. It may not always pan out. There's been plenty of times where we've got it wrong, but we learn from it, we assess, and we go again.
Well, it begs the question, where did the brand Skinny Dip come from if you're going hand sanitizer, phone cases, and pet accessories? I'm intrigued.
How did it originate?
Yeah.
Should have said that at the beginning. So I did law at university. I worked for 3 days in a law firm and quit. It's the only job I've ever quit because I always had this ideal of being happy in a position of work, whatever that was. I never wanted to go to bed on a Sunday night and think to myself, oh, I've got work the next day. I wanted to enjoy it, because my logic was, you spend so much of your life at work, why not do something you enjoy? And if you enjoy it, the likelihood is you'll be successful at it. And if you're successful at something, then money is a byproduct sometimes of that success. I remember trying every job I could think of, and my best friend called me up and he said, I'm in the Apple store. And he was with his girlfriend, who's now his wife. He said, it's unbelievable. There's 10 companies that are all doing a black iPhone case. How are they all in business doing the exact same product? And at that time, I was working in fashion, and I remember thinking to myself, Topshop sell wallets and watches and purses and Haribo sweets by the till point, and every one of their customers is walking in holding their phone, and the market is just geared towards a man. Nobody thinking about the other 50% of the population. We had no experience. I was 23. My business partner, Lewis, was 22. My brother was 21 and just graduated. So we said we'd start this business and we'd give it 6 months and see if it would work. We literally typed in, so we went into Apple, we saw everything said made in China. So honest to God, we went onto Google and we typed phone case, China. And we managed to find, I swear this is the truth, and we found an exhibition in Hong Kong. And that was our foray. We wanted to build a fashion brand. That was our idea. But we wanted to go into a category that everybody that we told we were doing would laugh at. Because maybe a lot of you still today, but there's people that do, would care about phone cases. It's not a product category that is a mainstream product that people would often think about. So we went to this exhibition in Hong Kong. We spent 3 days walking up and down this enormous exhibition. And I remember being asked stuff like, what's your MOQ, minimum order quantity, that you normally place? I didn't have a Scooby what the guy was saying to me. So I remember going back to him and saying, well, what's your MOQ? Hoping if I deflected the question back to him, I would get an idea on what he was talking about. And we came back from this exhibition. My business partner, Lewis, did philosophy at university. He taught himself to be a horrible designer. And we made a list of every single retailer in the country. And we started calling. And eventually, we managed to get a buyer at River Island to return one of our calls. And she said, if I give you 10 minutes, will you promise to leave me alone? I said, I swear to you, you'll never hear from me again. We went into this meeting and the buyer turned around to us and we said to her, look, every one of your customers is walking in holding a phone. This is a product category that I know your customer will buy. And we walked out, there was a 50 grand order. And that was the start of it. If I kind of fast forward, we then had no money for marketing. We didn't even have a website. Our website, when we first launched, we used to get 3 visitors a day, which was myself, my mother, and my grandmother. And the day we took £100 on our first day, we thought we'd won the lottery. We couldn't believe we took £100 on our website. And we did Dragon's Den. I don't know how many of you guys knew of that. So back in 2012, with no money for marketing and 3 kids working in an industrial estate in the shadow of Wembley Stadium, we said, well, we want to try and get third-party investment, and Dragon's Den was a great opportunity. So we went on that. You were in there for 2.5 hours that they cut down for 10 minutes, and it went really well. We got investment offers from a few of the Dragons, which we were blown away with. We accepted a deal from Peter Jones. It never actually went through afterwards. The reason being, and he was a lovely guy outside of the den. In the den, they're very stern. They kind of like stare at you and try and psych you out. And they're looking for that one moment where it can make good TV. But when we went on there, afterwards, they give you a contract that's like that thick because they've been burnt in the past by other businesses. So we very politely turned down the deal. And again, that's where I always think it's great for businesses to think outside the box, because going on to BBC in front of 3 or 4 million people on prime time to talk about your business, our website went from getting, I think, 10 visitors a day to the day the show launched. I think we got about 65,000 visitors onto site as the show was launching. And that was our initial, again, we never talk about Dragon's Den. You'll never see Dragon's Den on Skinny Dip, but that was our springboard to grow the business. We never thought about retailing at that point. We were a wholesaler. We were selling at one point to Harvey Nichols and George of Asda, which I think were one of the only brands that have managed to get to the top end of the market and all the way at the bottom end of the market. But our big break happened was where we got an opportunity to launch into Topshop, which is why I would think events like this are so fantastic, because I went to an event similar to this, slightly different. It was kind of like a charity networking event where the CEO of Arcadia was speaking. And I remember thinking to myself, we had tried from a bottom-down approach, the right way to get into Topshop. And every time we got told, no, not interested, not interested. So we thought, got nothing to lose. We went to this event. We couldn't afford a ticket for this event, so we actually said we'd give free goodie bags away if we would just get an opportunity to go in. We went up to the CEO and we said to him, we'd love to work with Topshop. And he said, I know you guys, you were on Dragon's Den and you sell in River Island. And we said, yes, because their buyers accepted our calls and your buyers won't accept our calls. And he said, well, look, I'm not going to get involved in buying decisions, but I'll call you at 8 o'clock the next morning and I'll give you an opportunity to see if the team want to buy from you. Sure enough, the next morning, 8 o'clock, as we're opening the office door, there was awful traffic that day. I still remember it very vividly, running into the office and the phone ringing. And it was Ian Grabina, who was the CEO of Arcadia, an unbelievable guy for us.
He's a nice guy, yeah. It's really
lovely guy. But what he did for us, which I think every business needs when I talk about getting a break and an opportunity, is he just got the door a tiny bit open for us. And we went into this meeting, and I remember the head of Topshop, a lady, also lovely lady called Emma Wisdom that now runs Urban Outfitters. She turned around and said, I'm not going to buy from you. I'm going to give you a 4-week concession in Topshop Oxford Circus. And I remember going to the toilet and Googling what a concession was, because I genuinely had never, ever, we were really green at the time. And it was that scary feeling of actually we had to own the stock. But we said, okay, if that's our opportunity, we'll take it. We bought this stock. We did the induction day at Topshop, so we actually worked on the shop floor ourselves because we wanted to see who, at that point, when you wholesale, you don't always see who your customer is. When you retail, you can actually, and physically retail in terms of bricks and mortar and concession, you can stand in a store and you can actually see your customer, and the data and the knowledge you get in the real world from standing in a store and seeing a customer is unbelievable. And that was a springboard. That one concession, we were meant to take $5,000 in our first week. We took $4,500 in our first day. And that launched into 200. That's what grew the website. And that's how the brand evolved. And all of a sudden, we had this space in store where we were doing phone cases. It wasn't big enough. So that's where handbags came in, cosmetic bags, beauty, sunglasses, jewellery. And one thing kind of spiraled into another.
Amazing story. That's really fascinating. Thank you very much. Just conscious of time, and we're probably out of time now, I think, from that side. Is there any questions? James is going to be around for a little while later if there's later questions anyway. But any questions over there? Bear me 2 seconds.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. And I'll keep it brief because I know I am stopping the drinks. I'm Rebecca. I'm country director of the Hunger Project, and it actually relates back to the previous panel as well. You've talked a lot about care and happiness, and obviously, James, you talked about authenticity and brand value, but how much is sort of purpose-led business making sort of rumbles in this arena, and sustainability and the climate emergency we're in? How is it shaping your business to make sure that you're led by people and planet as well as profit?
Super important, because I go back to it's a really good question, and I think it's something which every business nowadays, successful businesses, they need to be authentic and they need to be genuine. So when we talk about sustainability, it's a really interesting topic, because especially in fashion, it's become a buzzword for seeing who can be the most sustainable. And I remember doing a panel about 9 months ago of about 300 people. It was a young business event. And I said, how important is sustainability to you guys? Every single person put their hand up. I said, how many of you, honestly, buy fast fashion, wear it once, post it on Instagram and never wear the outfit again? And 3/4 of the hand went up. So I think our logic when it comes to sustainability and being a purpose-driven business is do the right thing, do what we feel is the right thing, and don't try and overpromise, because whatever you do, there's always 10 things that you're not doing that people will say, okay, you're doing this, but you're not doing this, and you're not doing this, and you're not doing this. So when I talk about Skinny Dip sustainability, I think it's very important that where we produce our products is made in an ethical, humane way. So all of our suppliers are audited. You take a brand like Everlay that publish their factories on their website. I think that's fantastic. It's something that Skinny Dip, we're going to follow the example of brands like that and list where all of our suppliers are. In terms of kind of products, and again, it's on our packaging, but it's not something we necessarily would shout about. All of our phone cases are recyclable. We don't use any secondary plastics. All of our beauty are vegan, and we're getting Leaping Bunny accredited. In terms of our fashion, we try and use as many materials as possible that are from recycled fabrics. But I think that the danger of brands is it almost becomes a show-off of who's doing more. And I think our logic in growing Skinny Dip, and we have a platform called Hate Sucks that we run alongside Skinny Dip, which is raising awareness for various causes that are important, not just to me, but to our entire team, is when you have a platform and an engaged platform where we have 700,000 followers on Instagram and 1.4 million people on our mailing list, I just think the right thing to do is to do more than sell product. But that's just our business. I can't speak on behalf of everyone else's. And I think if you're being authentic and you're doing it for the right reasons, and that's why I think that, profitability is important, but actually being a good person and doing the right thing is more important.
Any other questions? All good. I think everybody's ready for the bar, aren't they? So it's
Sorry to keep you guys waiting from the bar.
Thank you very much, James. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.